that you can possibly think of that you've gone through. And I'm proud of you. And I want to encourage you today in this small Devo, real quick, as we get into God's Word. And I hope this right here will bless you. And let's get started. I want to start off with the book of the Bible. We're going to talk about a person who lost their source of power. And it's on page 190 in my Bible, all right? And it's found in... We're going to look at, because I have a short amount of time. Okay, we're going to look at verse 16 and verse 17, okay? And this is the story of a man that I think every guy wants to be like. Every guy wish we had this kind of power. And we're going to read the fall of Samson. In verse 16 through 17, it says, she kept at it day and night. This is talking about Delilah. And nagging and tormenting him. Finally, he was fed up. He couldn't take another minute of it. He spilled it. He told her, "A razor has never touched my head. I've been God's Nazarite from conception. If I were shaved, my strength would leave me. I would be as helpless as any other mortal." In verse 18, it talks about Delilah realizing that she had his secret. She sent for the Philistine tyrants, telling them, "Come quickly. This time he's told me the truth." And then they brought her the bribe money. And then we already know what happens next. She put him to sleep and cut off his strands. And woke up and he lost his hair. Probably was uneven. And he had the worst haircut ever that cost him his strength. I want to not derail, but more of like push aside this word strength. And the root and the meaning of what that strength was his power. His strength was his power. And being nagged at by someone who wasn't equally yoked as him, even though he was falling astray, he loses his power. He loses his strength. And he loses power, and all of a sudden everything changed. The whole dynamic, everything that he was able to do is now lost. From lifting a table with one hand, now he has to, with one finger, now he has to use both hands. Everything is taken away from him. He's stripped and he lost his power. And because he lost his power, he's no longer able to function the way God intended for him to function. Just like many of us, right? We lost power Monday, and it was a big shock for us. I know when it first hit us, I didn't know what to expect. I was like, man, well, the power lost. And I forgot what I was doing. I was doing something. And I was talking with my wife, Cynthia, and then all of a sudden the power goes out. And after the power goes out, I was like, bro, are you kidding me? I was like, it's going to come back on. It didn't come back on. And I was like, dang it. Okay, all right, we're going to work through this, all right? Some of my game systems were on. My computer was on, but it's fine. It was the laptop, so it was charged, it was good. At this point, when the power went out, we knew that we had to do certain things to keep us going, at least keep our devices going, keep our phones charged, and everything else that needed to be charged. What's interesting, though, is that once power was taken away from us, the value of electricity became more meaning to us than ever in our life. After Monday hit, we lost that, and we lost, our heater, and then the heater, we missed out on the heater, and then it got to, 10, 12, 15 degrees, and it just started getting crazy. And I remember that night, my parents came over to the house, and we started lighting up the fireplace, and feeding this fire with the wood, and just, trying to stay up and trying to put it in. My dad would get up and put it. I would get up every now and then to kind of just mess with it, trying to make sure this fire was going. And I remember knocking out, and by the time I woke up, this fire was gone. I was like, man, all this work and it's just trying to stay warm, making sure my kids are warm. And it was just a crazy experience. And it's crazy because all our focus and energy was to try and keep warm because we lost the power. And we kept feeding a fire that we had to keep putting things in it to keep it on, to keep it going, to keeping us warm. And so all our attention, all our energy, all our focus was, man, we got to make sure this fire is on because the power and the electricity is out. And yes, this is physical, but this is also teaching us how we are when we are in the spiritual side in our walk with life. When you disconnect your power, when you disconnect the source, when you disconnect from God, you are now having to feed your spiritual needs, and you're now trying to feed that with physical things. And so what happens is you find yourself feeding a fire that's not gonna last. You start going into natural and physical things when you got spiritual needs, and you know you're spiritually dry, and you know your walk with God is just not there anymore. And it's not there, and it's not the way it was, and it's not the way it needs to be. And so you keep filling up a spiritual void with things that are physical. And now you find yourself, I'm tired. You find yourself, man, this is not what I expected. You find yourself, man, I know I'm not where I need to be with God, but I didn't think it was gonna be this bad, right? And you find yourself stuck. You find yourself in a place where I'm dry. What if I told you that the next thing that you needed was not another physical aspect? But what if I told you all you needed was one encounter with God? To get connected back to Him and say, God, I need you to turn the power back on my life. You see, I've been trying to keep the fire on. And you know, I want you to just take because I preach about the fire, bro. Like the fire of God in our life that never runs out. I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about a physical fire that you have to feel. Because the minute you stop, you are dry and you're empty and you're unhappy. Jesus calls Himself the great I am. The great I am. That's His title. But He also calls Himself the living water. And that's another thing really messed me up. I was talking to some people in church today, and I was like, so how was it? How are you doing? You know, I couldn't really get to you because I didn't have signal and everything. How'd you do it? There's some of them were telling me, man, we lost water on Monday, and then on Thursday, and it felt so good to take a shower because we haven't showered in like 4 or 5 days. I felt nasty. I didn't want to take out the thing on my hair. I put my hair up because I just felt gross. And I'm like, man, you're nasty. I'm just kidding. But look, when you lost the water, the need for going to wash your hands, to going to the sink to wash. I'll tell you what, like us washing bottles for our kids is like important to us. So not having water, and we just realized the disconnect from the water really messed up the vessel that feeds our kids. When you disconnect from the water source, you can't get clean. When you disconnect yourself from the living water, Jesus, you cannot truly get clean. Jesus says that anybody who thirsts after me, I will fill their soul where they will never thirst again. I don't know about you, I'm done, and I keep going, but how many of us have gone through this and just like, bro, I never want to go through this again. Losing power, losing, the electricity, losing water. It was a horrible experience. And I'm glad that all of that is, and I hope I never go through that again. But in the same way, I want you to get closer to God so you can say, I never want to be disconnected from God. I never want to be disconnected from your presence, Lord. I always want to be where you are. And if there's one thing that you can learn from the life of Samson, the reason why he fell away to the point where he lost his power, and I'm talking about the spiritual side things here, in this story is because he connected with people that really weren't like-minded, that weren't really helping him. He got in the wrong relationship, and that's what messed it up. You know, he was called to live a life of holiness before God. And that's one thing that we forget, and that's including myself too. We need to live a life of holiness before God. And I know that when we dedicate ourselves to living a life of holiness, we're not going to probably be in the wrong relationships, the wrong friendships, probably the wrong conversations that'll lead us to other things. Let's live a life of holiness. Let's not get disconnected. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you guys in the next session.